Hey folks, JD here. Thanks for checking out the video once again. I want to talk to you about some things that I've been thinking about lately, and this video really came out of a lecture that I was able to give recently to the faculty and students in the School of the Arts at Samford University, where I'm a professor in our Christian ministry department. I was asked to give this year's distinguished faculty lecture, which was an incredible honor to do that. And I talked about the opportunities that we have as artists to leverage art for the mission of God. In fact, I'm gonna post below a link to my lecture. If you're interested, you can read it there. But here's the thing that's gotten me thinking for this video, and that is, I really believe that the church has had a bittersweet relationship when it comes to her approach to art throughout her history. Now, when I'm talking about art, don't hear me just say, painting or something like that. But I'm talking about all those creative expressions, whether it's through music or dance or sculpture or painting or drawing. I mean, so many things that are out there, poetry, all of those things, all of those creative opportunities, all those creative expressions. I think that throughout the church's history, the church has really approached art in at least four different ways, with four different attitudes. And the historians that are watching this, you probably won't like my broad generalizations and how I'm condensing down so much history, but for the sake of this video and the time that we have. The first way that I think the church has often approached art has been to basically approach it with the perspective of godly art. And the attitude is, let's use it. Meaning, let's bring that into the worship of the church. So painting, as long as it's got Christian imagery, things of that nature, we'll use that, we'll bring that in. Music, we'll bring that into our hymnody. As long as there are those overtly Christian aspects, it's godly art, let's bring it in. The other perspective number two, basically would say, this is ungodly art. And the attitude is, let's avoid it. Now, hear me on this, and that is, it's called ungodly art because there's nothing overtly Christian in it. It's not referred to as something we need to avoid because it is something that tempts people or because it's overtly sinful. That's not what I'm saying. It's the perspective of saying, hey, this does not have overtly Christian imagery and symbols, so therefore, let's avoid it. The third perspective is the perspective of this secular and sacred divided art, if you will. It's the attitude of keeping the sacred and the secular separated. We can enjoy both as Christians, but we have to keep them separated and enjoy them in different contexts. So we enjoy the sacred in our worship gatherings. We enjoy the secular on our Spotify playlists, or the concert we go to, or the music that we hear in the doctor's office, or at the art museum downtown, or at the dance that we saw this past weekend, or the music, or whatever. It's separating matters of faith from matters of that which is public in the marketplace. And then there's a fourth way. And the fourth perspective I think that the church has often approached art is with the perspective of what I would call basically, who cares about art? And it's the attitude of, let's just not be concerned about it. So throughout the church's history, these various expressions, attitudes, perspectives have shown up in a variety of ways. And while things, I believe, at least here in the States and at least in North America, are improving when it comes to artists, especially in the area of worship and music related to worship, for the most part, there's still a great deal of artists being marginalized. And artists that are not being discipled by the church will be discipled by the world. And so we have a great stewardship opportunity, church leaders, at this point in time, to think about, what does it mean to help the artists that are part of our faith family catch a global vision for God's glory among the nations, whether that's across the street, throughout North America, or somewhere across the globe. and then to help them, even though we don't have all the answers and we don't know all the things to say and do, but to help them get into the marketplace where they can use their skills, their passions, their talents, their abilities, their artistic expressions for God's glory, however He takes them. We've got to begin to think in those terms. You know, several years ago, I approached my pastor. This was when I was a high school student. And I said, I sense that the Lord may be leading me into pastoral ministry. And he encouraged me. He asked some questions. He affirmed me. He gave me an opportunity to preach. He shared my story with the church family. They were affirming. He answered my questions. But for the most part, I had to figure it out on my own. There was no internet. I was not given a book. I don't even know if there was a book around. And I had to ask questions. So I didn't know what seminary was. I didn't know I had to go to college first. How does a person become a pastor anyway? How do I do this when I'm a pastor? And so there's so much I had to figure out on my own. And then just a few years ago, I got to thinking, my story is not that unusual. And if that is what the church does, how the church often approaches shepherding her future leaders into church ministry, how much less does she do for her artists? For anyone going into the marketplace, but for the sake of this video, for her artists. And you think about just the influence, the power, the opportunity that artists have throughout the world. It's incredible. I remember recently hearing about a developing hip-hop scene. Actually, it's already developed. A hip-hop scene that's developed in Morocco and in other parts of North Africa. This is in Muslim communities. This is a hip-hop scene. I just recently read an article which was actually a follow-up story of something that I had watched about a year ago about the heavy metal scene that's in Mongolia. The globalization of artistic expression is amazing. I remember a few years ago being at the International Bluegrass Museum in Owensboro, Kentucky. I grew up in southeastern Kentucky, and I was out west, out in Owensboro. And I remember going into one room, and there was this room with this map on the wall, and it said where all the bluegrass festivals are every year across the world. And there were hundreds of them all over the world. And I looked at East Asia, and Japan had scores of annual bluegrass festivals. The Japanese are one of the world's largest unreached people groups. And I'm thinking here, a music genre that really developed and took the name for the bluegrass state is in Japan. What's the kingdom potential that's there? And so I wanted to put together this video to try to get us as church leaders to think about how we need to begin to leverage our artists for God's mission in the world. Some of those artists, they'll become a part of the worshiping community to express their artistic abilities that way, and that's wonderful, that's fine. But there will be a majority of those that will be going into the marketplace, that will be going into venues that are incredibly dark places, and they're often going alone. Oh, yes, they're believers. Yes, they're filled with the Spirit of God, but they don't have any sort of church encouragement, guidance, instruction, prayer support, things of that nature. So, pastors, I know that this is totally outside of our realm of training. We don't have classes at seminaries that basically say how to shepherd your artists to the marketplace for the mission of God and His glory among the nations. But we're going to have to try. We're going to have to get out there and just say, hey, artists, I don't have a clue what we're doing, but come help me figure this out. Let's work together on this. And artists, you're going to have to work with us because we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. We don't know which way to go. And so you're going to have to be a part of this journey as well. Think about this. God is the divine artist. The very first verse of the Bible, in the beginning, God created And you jump down to verse 27, verse 28 there in Genesis. He creates man and woman after his own image. He says, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, have dominion over it. From the very beginning, his mission was to have his image bearers glorifying him across planet Earth. And what they were doing across planet Earth was developing culture, developing civilization. And we see this continue throughout the scriptures. And now, separated from God through the fall, we now have to, as followers of Christ, take this good news to image bearers across the world that they may come to know him. And artists have an incredible opportunity to be able to do that in some of the most darkest, or some of the darkest places throughout the world. Church, we've got to be thinking about this. I don't have all the answers, but we need to be thinking about this and beginning to put some practical steps in moving forward. I want to put a few links below to some resources that may be of some help to get us thinking in this direction. I hope this is helpful to you. Hey, if you like this video, share it with someone else. Don't hide. Subscribe to my channel. And while you're there, strike like too. Bye.